My name is Mindy, and welcome to our Case 1 presentation, Whatever Happened to Marshawn Demers, also by Kerrigan Walsh, Josiah Melanson, Lauren Eastlack, and Jacob Henry. Title 7 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is a law that regulates equal employment opportunities in the U.S. This was a result of the civil rights movement in the early 60s, led by famous individuals such as Dr. Martin Luther King. The goal was to ensure that employment opportunities would be based upon an individual's ability or character rather than their race or religion, sex, or national origin. An employer may not hire, fire, or discriminate against them in terms of pay conditions, employment privileges, and it also states that there will be no consequences for reporting such behaviors or opposing a perceived illegal employment practice. In this case, this law was violated. Malik was ultimately denied a promotion based on his religious preference. Religious harassment is a violation of Title VII based on conduct displayed from his coworkers and as well as his supervisor. The work environment had become hostile, and that's what eventually led to the report to Ford and later escalating to Dixon. Why is it difficult for them to argue that Jenkins evaluated Malik's candidacy fairly? Malik was actually recommended by a supervisor at another facility at the current position that he has, and his annual performance review for that position that he was recommended for was actually superior in all areas. The candidate that was hired was an outside candidate. He did not work for the company, and he was also a member of Jenkins Church, as well as the harassment endured by Malik, not only his coworkers, but his direct supervisor Jenkins, who failed to address the harassment and also joined in on it. And now I'm going to pass you over to Lauren.
So some of the key terms that we discussed in class that are also apparent in this case include disparate treatment, which is the treating of individuals differently, which Title IX of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 clearly prohibits the discrimination against individuals because of their religion, race, age, sex, anything like that. Malik was treated differently and treated with disparate treatment when he applied for the system manager position and was not hired, and the individual that was hired, they were treated differently in the hiring process. Requirement to accommodate. Employers are expected to accommodate for reasonable needs by employees. When Malik asked for his time off for his religious observance week, there were many unnecessary questions, including statements that were not appropriate, questioning of the religion, name calling, expressing his thoughts and opinion about the religion, rather than just approving the time off because it was a reasonable act and there was nothing unreasonable about it. Harassment was very clear in this case. Prior to attending his religious event, the employees and supervisors, like I said, were taunting him. They were questioning the beliefs. They were questioning the authenticity. And they were spreading misinformation, which is clearly harassment. Once he got back from his religious observance, his name was changed because of that religion. And he was greeted with strange looks. He was treated extremely impolitely. He proceeded to go to his office that was filled with decorations and inappropriate objects, aiming to poke fun at his religion. Following the encounter in his office, he called his supervisor, who then did not do what he needed to do. And some of the harassment behavior included laughter, refusal to acknowledge his name. They also presented him with books that were racially discriminatory. And there was just a lot of harassment with letters and just not being inclusive, not understanding. And racial discrimination, as well as religion discrimination, plays a huge role in this case because of many of the comments that are made, because of the inability to immediately accommodate for his needs, the inability to respect his religion and his new name. And again, the discrimination, Title IX prohibits all of that. Treating Communications equal employment opportunity policy was clearly failed in this situation. They prohibit absolutely any discrimination on all aspects, on all levels of the business, including hiring, firing, transferring, evaluation, termination, and training. And I think that there could have been a lot of things that were done differently in this situation. I believe Jenkins, as a supervisor, was a clear person that violated this policy initially, as well as the employees that were involved. Because Jenkins was alerted and he did not act upon it, that is a clear violation of their own policy. And I think that a lot of things could have been done differently in this situation, including Jenkins acting upon this immediately and, holding a meeting of the employees to clearly explain that this is not acceptable. And also new training staff so that they can understand the workplace policies. So they're clearly not ever failed again. And I also believe that the HR manager that was involved should have taken action against Jenkins and should have held him accountable for the actions that occurred and his inability to act upon them. Some other recommendations that we have for this situation is, now that Judith Dixon is involved, she clearly needs to take action. She needs to be the one that's doing that because the leaders of the company in the Midwest facility are not doing what they need to do. Also, the training, highly essential, issuing warnings, punishing employees that do partake in this harassment. Also providing Malik with a fair interview for that promotion. He was clearly treated with disparate treatment and was treated differently, and he deserves a fair chance.
And here are some similar cases to Tretton's. In 2018, the United Parcel Service settled in court for $4.9 million. They failed to provide religious accommodations, and they also failed to hire and promote employees and applicants of the Muslim faith and other religions. This case relates to Tretton's because in both cases employees were discriminated against because of their faith. I felt this was an important example though because it shows how severe the financial consequences can be when discrimination is widespread across the workplace. In 2017, MVM Incorporated settled in court for $135,000. One of their security guards was harassed due to his race and religion, and they failed to provide him accommodations for the grooming policy. Also, when he brought this issue to HR, they didn't help and instead retaliated with discipline, scrutiny, and discharge. This case relates to Tretton because, again, he was discriminated against due to his race and Muslim faith. There was also HR issues in our case, although not as severe. In our case, HR eventually took the steps to solve the issue, while in this case, they didn't. They retaliated. But in both cases, there were issues with human resources. In both of these similar cases, HR either ignored or retaliated against the complaints. And I think this just goes to show how important it is that HR responds to issues like these in an appropriate fashion. I mean, they could have saved their companies a lot of money if they had. With the context of these similar cases, I think it's reasonable to assume that Tretton will have to pay somewhere around $100,000. In the United Parcel Service case, there were many victims. These issues were very widespread, and that wasn't the case in our case. So I don't think the financial impact will be as severe. However, in MVM Incorporated's case, the case concerned one victim whose harassment that they faced wasn't as severe as it was in our case. However, their HR team responded horrendously, while the HR team in our case eventually took the steps to try and resolve the issue. Due to this balance, though, of harassment and discrimination was worse with our case, but the HR response wasn't as bad. I think the financial impact will be similar.